They told us that ICE was the problem and that somehow cracking down on illegal immigration is more dangerous than the crime it's stopping. But now, ICE agents are getting attacked. The numbers are quite shocking. And as that's just happening, the Minnesota assassin comes forward with a confession letter directly blaming Governor Tim Walz. This isn't just violence, it's a fallout. And we're about to walk through it, y'all, clip by clip.
We're seeing these ambitious Democrat politicians who want to get their 15 minutes of fame off of the backs of our ICE law enforcement officers. We sadly, Maria, are seeing a 500% increase in assaults against our ICE enforcement operators. We're seeing Governor Walz, AOC, even Hakeem Jeffries likening our law enforcement to the Gestapo. It's disturbing. These are the men and women who are trying to protect us, trying to clean up America's streets. And the American people should know we are prioritizing the worst of the worst criminal legal aliens in this country. 75% of ICE arrests under the Trump administration have been of illegal immigrants who have prior convictions or pending criminal charges. So these aren't some innocents. We are getting rapists, gang members, known terrorists out of this country to make sure America's streets, like New York, are safe. We're seeing these.
So let me get this straight. You've got elected Democrats comparing ICE agents to Nazis. And now, shockingly, attacks on ICE are up 500%. Look, these aren't just words anymore. These are consequences. How do you defend rhetoric that directly results in violence towards law enforcement? And why isn't the media holding anybody accountable for the connection? Why isn't anybody on the Democrat side being held accountable, period? That's the only thing I'm looking at the Trump administration like, And while ICE agents are being hunted, Trump refuses to even pick up the phone for Governor Walz. Here's why.
On Minnesota, there were a lot of horrific details that came out today about the suspect who's been charged there. Have you called the governor yet or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't really call him. He appointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
On Minnesota.
Walter Kurt put under here, say what you want. I mean, in all honesty, what exactly would talking to Walz accomplish? I doubt anything said would even be remotely productive. Winston Lindsman replied, nothing of substance. Optics would be the only reason. Meanwhile, Democrat optics consist of 10 calling the man a threat to democracy and every other name in the book for 10 years straight. Say what you want about Trump, but this wasn't some petty dodge. He knew exactly who he was talking about. Walz isn't just incompetent. The man is connected to something much darker. And Trump saw it coming. What is that? I'm making up words now. Why would the president of the United States refuse to even acknowledge the governor doing a national tragedy? Or does he know that we don't know? Well, turns out there's a reason. Trump wanted nothing to do with Walz. Uh-oh, what's going on? Turns out there's a reason. And it's tied directly to this clip. At least that's what I'm doing. I'm putting my little journalistic powers together right now. But Jake put, it's a matter of public record that Vance Bolter was appointed by Walz for a board position. Why is the state government taking the site down? The man. Vance Belter, I always said Bolter. Same man accused of executing, well, we know who executed the elected officials. He was personally appointed by Tim Walz to the state board, and now the website is listing that appointment down for maintenance? Because of course it is. This wasn't some random act of violence, man. This was a breakdown in judgment at the highest level of state leadership right there. And now the state's trying to wipe it from the record. That's what I see. But that's not even the worst part. Because Belter didn't just act, y'all. He wrote a letter. And it's the smoking gun. It's breaking right here. Minnesota shooting suspect Vance Belter reportedly blamed Governor Tim Walz for his rampage in confession letter, according to Liz Collin. Now, I'll tell you who Liz Collin is. She's an investigative reporter / producer dedicated to the truth and facts stories matter to Minnesota. So she's with Alpha News. I haven't seen the confession letter myself, but this is being reported. This letter was allegedly intended for Cash Patel. Now this changes everything. In a confession letter reportedly sent to Cash Patel, he blames Walz directly for the bloodshed. Allegedly. Let that sink in. The man who pulled the trigger named the governor as a part of the reason why. If this letter pointed the finger at Trump, would it even be a question of transparency? Why aren't the feds releasing this document to the public? But if you think this was some heat of the moment meltdown, this next clip proves that is more than calculated.
Some of the final moves of a murder suspect before he was captured, caught on video. More about the mysterious Minneapolis address connected to Vance Belter next. I'm speaking with a neighbor of murder suspect Vance Belter in North Minneapolis. His name is Adam. He asked that we not mention his last name. I think you'll understand why here in just a bit. But Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today.
Just a horrifying few days, I know, for your family, but you've provided Alpha News with security camera video this weekend as a manhunt to find and arrest Belter dragged on for more than 40 hours. Full disclosure here, the FBI, law enforcement, they also, I know, have access to your video. Thankfully, Belter is now in custody. He's been federally charged with shooting and killing Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark. Belter has also been charged with shooting and critically injuring State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. But there's part of the story that happened before these tragic incidents that no one seems to be talking about, along with the video that shows some of his actions before and even after the shootings. But first, what can you tell us about Belter's living situation there? We understand that he was renting a room, Adam, for the last couple of years, but he wasn't actually staying at the residence all the time. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. He was subleasing a room.
And you mentioned that he'd be there very late at night is usually when you'd observe him there.
Yes, a lot of time he would come after midnight, and then there was also a lot of time where he would leave very early in the morning, like around 4 or 5 a.m.
What did you think of Belter? What were your impressions?
Well, with the way he dressed and the vehicle that he drove, my wife and I thought that, he was a detective or maybe some kind of private investigator.
So the place where Belter rented a room seems like a bit of a problem property in the conversations that we've had, Adam. In fact, you said a drug overdose happened there not that long ago. Along with what has happened in the past, there's this security video of what happened last weekend. And again, just to be clear, you are cooperating with law enforcement. They have access to all of this video. Your security cameras record several moments of Belter just before he allegedly committed these horrific shootings. In hindsight, it seems as though he was setting up Thursday, Friday. Sort of walk us through the timeline here, and what did you see?
We didn't see any of his vehicles at the house in the couple days prior to Thursday. And then we did notice after going back through our security footage that he looks like he arrived where he was subleasing at around 10 p.m. on Thursday night. And then he's there in the house and doesn't leave until about Friday around 11:50. And when he leaves Friday, you see him kind of dressed in the clothing where he looks like a detective or a private investigator, and he has like some papers or a notebook in his hand. And then, and we think he was setting up, like planning for the murders. And then Around 5:38, 5:40 p.m., he comes back and he has different clothes on, maybe the same pants, but he has a different shirt, so he changed clothes while he was out. He then, around 7 p.m., has a raincoat on and loads a bag into the vehicle that he was driving. That was one of the fake police cars. And then he pulls that car around to the back of the property, and that's actually where that car stays. And then around 8:45, it looks like he leaves on a bicycle in the alleyway. And then we did notice, too, that he was back at that residence for something at 12:55 a.m. on Saturday morning. Our camera shows him pulling away from the driveway in the alley right before going to the Hoffman's residence. He comes back at 6 a.m. and breaks the window out of his own vehicle. He's gone and not seen at that residence again. And then around 8 a.m., the Minneapolis police come and take his roommates. And then there's no SWAT operation until 2 p.m.
Okay, so obviously a lot of questions here. We did go ahead and release that video this weekend of him smashing his vehicle, the window out of that vehicle. Any speculation as to why he was doing that?
I think that he may have been smashing his own window out to make it look like there was auto break-in or some kind of alibi. There's been a lot of auto thefts and auto break-ins in this exact neighborhood.
So 3 hours after Belter allegedly shot and killed the Hortmans, your security camera records him again that morning. It's 2 hours then after that, that police are there on scene. What's the scene like now here days later in that neighborhood? Are you surprised that this address doesn't seem to be more of a focus of the investigation?
Yes, it's actually life as normal. There's been no police presence at all. There was no police presence while he was on the run. And there's been no visible police coming and taking evidence, searching the house, looking for evidence, going through the garage. And it appears that he was the house in Minneapolis was the central hub of his crime. He was here 2 days before and hours after committing the crimes.
What then, Adam, is going through your mind when you hear it's this guy, allegedly behind all of this, Vance Bolter, and that he was living right there for the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's shocking to know that there was a murderer that close to us and that close to my family.
And Adam, this isn't the only crime problem you've had to deal with. You mentioned in previous conversations we've had, things have really changed for the worse in your area. What did you want to say about that?
I think that the residents want a strong police force, and we are not getting that from the Minneapolis police. The Minneapolis police, if you call them, if they don't deem the situation important enough, will not arrive at all. If they do arrive, they arrive late and to almost miss what's happened and then write a report so they can go about their day and not be involved in anything as it's currently happening or breaking down.
Very unnerving for sure, Adam. We wish you the best. Thank you for joining me to talk about all of this.
Thank you, Liz.
Wow.
And that will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.
So this man was staging fake ad-libs, switching outfits, breaking his own windows out of his car to make it look like it was some sort of robbery happening. This wasn't a madman. This was a premeditated political assassin. And apparently the media doesn't want us to see that footage. I mean, how many red flags do you need before this stops being a mental health issue and starts being political? And when you start realizing how bad it looks, that's when the distancing begins.
What's suspicious to me is, if he had a MAGA manifesto, it'd be in the news. So he has written a manifesto. And Gene, every time they have a shooting, and they determined not to let people know what was written, I always suspect that it reveals the fact that the person was whack, and it doesn't reflect well on the left-wing media because they champion their cause so well. So I watched a video today, and if you get a chance to see it, I encourage you, of his roommate, a really sketchy character. I mean, he was reading a tweet, a text message from the killer saying, I know, just be sure you knew nothing about what I was going to do. Almost like he's giving him an alibi. Whatever happens, you knew nothing about this. And I thought, the whole thing is mentally ill. The whole thing is imbalanced. And I was thinking while I'm listening to this, that shooting that happened in Washington with that beautiful young Jewish couple, the crazy guy throwing Molotov cocktails on Jewish people in Colorado, what they have in common is Christianity does give you a sound mind. If it's done right, what the Apostle Paul prayed is that God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And boy, am I grateful that there's a solution to this mental illness that causes other people to go to that level of crazy.
No, suddenly he's one of ours. He's one of theirs. I don't know. We're watching people scramble to define evil, I guess, on their terms. As if faith, party, or ideology automatically clears your name somehow. I don't know who he voted for. I keep hearing that he voted for Trump. I keep hearing that he was a Democrat. I mean, my take on it is if he did vote for Trump, we never hit the end of it. But I could be wrong. Could be wrong. But let's assume that he is on this side. Why is it so hard for people to admit when someone from their side goes rogue? If he was a Trump supporter, he's still wrong. Does it change a few things? Sure, it changes a few perspectives, but it doesn't change the overall perspective. He was wrong. He deserves everything coming to him. Truth doesn't have a party. But this isn't just about Belton anymore. Minnesota's leadership is actively unraveling. Here's proof.
Can you talk a little bit more about the manifesto and what kind of motivation it might be? We're told that there might be some pro-choice lawmakers on this manifesto. That has anything to do with the motivation here?
At this point in time, it would be premature. The question is the manifesto and the information that we have received as their motivations. We are working diligently on that. There's certainly some indications within that, but there's not specifics enough. We have been, this is a very active and fluid investigation. Throughout the day, as you've been waiting and these teams have been out working out in the field, and they have been gathering more documents and information. So it would be premature for me at this point to really say exactly what the motivation might be from these writings, but we will be continuing to work on that and provide that information when we're able.
So Vance Bolter has a manifesto that the police and MSM refuse to release. What if it's because he's another far-left communist Antifa and Antichrist, is what they said. These have been their soldiers of choice for well over 100 years now, as you can see in the quoted thread. If he was a Trump supporter, his manifesto supported Trump, MSM would blast it 24/7, but they're covering it up. That says a lot. Let's read a few comments. What would say? Vance, Belton, and his wife both work for Tim Walz. Yeah, these are things we already know, I guess. Anyhow, this right here is what I should have showed you. Yes. Democrat donor Jonathan Bond arrested. Told y'all that Minnesota's leadership is actively unraveling. I told you. My bad on delaying the proof. Let me get my face off the screen, Jeff, for a second, just so you can no, you know what? I can just switch. Boom. There you go. You can see him right there. Another one, Jonathan Bond. Democrat donor and Capitol lobbyist, it says here. Arrested for threatening to commit violence at the state capitol. What is going on in Minnesota? This isn't random. This isn't rare. It's a pattern that I'm seeing. And it's happening under Walz's nose or with his eyes closed. Let's bring this home. ICE agents are being attacked in record numbers, up 500%. You got the Minnesota assassin blaming, or point blame at Governor Walz. He called him by his name, y'all. At least that's what's being reported. And while all this unfolds, we got Democrat donors getting arrested for more threats in the same state. They don't want to connect the dots, but the American people already are doing it. That's what we're doing right now, y'all. Now, do y'all believe this was just coincidence? Or is there something deeply broken in the Democrat leadership? Let me know in the comments. Y'all be safe. As always, please go check on somebody today. You know you could be saving their life, right? You know you could be saving their life, right? Be a good friend today, man. Peace.